everyone, and this is Phoenix here, and today we're going to be doing a wishful thinking video, and that's going to be on games that were poorly received that I think deserve remakes. So I'm sure you all know by now that it seems like there's like a shit ton of games that are getting remade, and most of the games that are getting remade are games that, well, I think are already pretty damn good as they are. But have you ever thought about remaking games that I feel like that truly deserve to get like a second chance, like games that actually have like really good ideas, but unfortunately were met with disappointment, or they just had some issues that just didn't work out very well, you know, the usual kind of stuff. So there's three different categories of games that I decided to pick out here. We got some that are, well, bad, and then you have some that, like, are not necessarily bad, like, they're pretty okay, but they just could have been a whole lot better. And finally, there are just some games on here that just haven't aged very well, unfortunately, so they are probably pretty decent if you played them back in the day, but if you try going back to them now, it just kind of makes you wish that, man, this could really use a remake. So that's all I really have to say here, so let's just get right to it. So the first one I want to talk about here is a PS3 game called Lair. Yeah, do you guys remember this shit? So it's a game where you just like fly around a dragon and you just blow stuff up. It sounds kind of fun. In fact, it actually kind of reminds me of like Panzer Dragoon, which you think would be awesome, but unfortunately, the game I thought was just kind of mediocre and just really crappy. But I do have a little bit of a history with this game that I will go into. So I actually first played this game in about like 2007, 2008. I know a friend of mine had a PS3 and he had this game, and that's how I played it, as his house. And yeah, at the time I was like, man, this game is like not as good as I was kind of hoping it would be, because I actually thought the cover art for the game looked really cool. And it seemed like that many other people also like really hated this game too. In fact, I know one problem that everyone always brings up is the fact that it's one of those games that you have to use the 6-axis, and it always like felt weird and clunky. And I do agree, that was definitely the worst part of the game. But I have heard that they did make a patch later on where they did fix it, where you can actually play the game like how you normally would, but I think at that point, I don't think anybody cared, and they just moved on to other things, so now this game is basically just long unforgotten. Also, other problems with the game too is that, like, a lot of the missions in the game were, like, really repetitive and kind of tedious to do, and on top of that too, like, the game's graphics were just very brown looking. Like, this is definitely one of the most brown looking games that came out on, like, the early days of the PS3. But despite of all this though, I always thought that this game could have actually been a really awesome game if done right. For like I said, I did mention that this game almost sounds like it could have been like another Panzer Dragoon game, and you know what? If this game kind of did play more similar to that, where it's just, you know, you just shoot at a bunch of monsters, you fight giant bosses and all that, I think this actually could have been really awesome. Or I'll even go the extra mile and kind of make this game like an RPG where you're just like a guy and a dragon, and you can like customize the dragon. You can also equip like newer different type of stuff, and then on top of that you just fly around in this world, you shoot at stuff, and then you do like, you know, quest lines to do different things, and of course there's also giant bosses. And yeah, you know what, that's basically what Panzer Dragoon Saga is, and this game basically could have been like a successor to that. And Panzer Dragoon Saga is one of those games that's still pretty unique in its own right, for that, like, not many people have tried to, like, recreate something similar to it. And also, you know, it's one of those games that, like, for anyone that's played it, they always yammer on and saying how it's, like, one of the greatest games ever made. And I really do think that the game Lair could have been something pretty similar to it if they were going for that direction, which, unfortunately, they didn't. But like I said, I think this game could have actually been something really close to it, and that would have been really awesome. So now, let's get moving on to the other game here, and this one's also on PS3, and this one happens to be PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. So this game definitely has some contentions with it, where that you got some people that really hate this game, and then you got some people that actually do like it. Yeah, this game actually does have quite a bit of a cult following. And I can definitely see why. For that, I always found that the whole idea of having like a PlayStation like Smash Bros type game was actually a really cool idea. In fact, even as a kid, when I was like obsessed with Super Smash Bros. Melee, I actually thought that it would have been really awesome if like PlayStation and Xbox like did something kind of similar with their own like franchises. So when this game first got announced, I was actually looking forward to the game, because I was like, wow, like that's like one of my dream ideas actually happening. And then I played the game, and then, well, I was a little disappointed, but I didn't hate it though. I didn't think it was bad. I just think it was just a little bit average and definitely not nearly as awesome as I was kind of hoping it was going to be. So my biggest complaint with this game was the way how you had to like win at it was that you could only like knock people out by using your special attack by gaining the meter up over time. I don't know, I just felt like it just made a lot of the matches just feel very like the same all the time. It wasn't like how in Smash Brothers where you could literally just knock people out of the ring with like any different way you wanted. In this game, like, that was your only way, so it made like using like all like the different items and such like kind of useless. But other than all this though, I did found that like everything else was pretty charming about the game. Like, I actually did like some of the cast of characters that they had. Yeah, I know some people complained that they wish they had more, but you gotta remember, this is like the very first time they made a game like this, so it's understandable they didn't want to include like a shit ton of stuff like right at the front gate. And it always seems like that whenever it comes to like these sort of like crossover type games, people are always very fickle about like who they put in, who they didn't put in, and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, it's one of the type of things that like you're never going to satisfy everyone. So I think if they made a new game for this, whether it be like a sequel or just a flat out just remake or whatever it is, well, I think they just really need to like I said, they need to fix up that whole thing I just complained about, the way how you can knock people out. I understand they wanted to be different, but I think there's a reason why that the Smash formula really worked. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about this one. I know I could probably go like a lot more in depth into this though, but we got other games we got to cover. But yeah, really all I want is just like a decently well played like Smash Bros game with like, you know, different characters from like Sony themselves. Because, you know, they got a lot of really cool IPs that they can definitely mess with. Or hell, they don't even really have to make a fighting game either. Like, it'd even be kind of interesting if they did like a party game, a racing game, or even like some sort of like RPG with all the different like Sony characters just like going on an adventure or something. I don't know, I'd be down with that. Alright, and next up we got is an old 3D platformer, and that being Croc. Yeah, do you remember Croc and Croc 2? Yeah, those two games. These were games that I rented as a kid, and I remember really liking it, mostly just because, you know, I just thought, like, the alligator character just looked really cool, and plus on top of that, too, the game was just very bright and colorful, and, you know, it just looked like a cute little platformer. And at the time, I did like it, even though I sucked at it, but then when I tried replaying it nowadays, I'm like, yeah, no wonder why I sucked at this game. Trying to play a 3D platformer with tank controls is like, what the fuck? So this is one of those games that's kind of more on the side of it hasn't aged very well. And like I just said, tank controls on a platformer is one of those things that do not belong together. Like, I'm cool with like tank controls within like survival horrors and like adventure games where there's like no like platforming or anything you gotta worry about, but in a game like this, yeah, they don't belong here. So if this game got remade, then yeah, it needs to play like a normal fucking platformer. And I did found that there was something charming about the character Croc, so, you know, I just think it's just one of those, like, platformers that I just kind of wanted to see, like, succeed a little bit better. So yeah, for this one, I'm not really asking for a lot. It's really just updated controls and obviously make the graphics, like, more up-to-date and more bright and colorful. And then, of course, I have, like, a really awesome soundtrack, and, well, there you go. That's really all I want. It's just a quirky, fun little platformer of a crocodile. Alright, and the next one here is yet another PS1 game, and this one's actually a Japan-only one, and that happens to be Runner's High. Yeah, it's a racing game with a bunch of characters that just happen to, like, took a bong hit and decided to just race against each other. Okay, just kidding. But in all seriousness, though, it's basically a racing game that takes place in the future where you're running on foot. And you can also punch and jump over the other racers too, so it's actually kind of fun. In fact, I will go and say that out of all the games that I'm mentioning on this list, this is actually my favorite game out of all of them. I actually don't think it's that bad of a game, but why am I putting it in here if it's not that bad? Well, I do have one thing about this game that just hasn't aged very well, and that's the fact that this game barely has any content. Like, there's only, like, 4 maps in the entire game, and then once you beat them, then that's it. Like, there's no unlockables or anything. It's just a very basic, bare-bones game, which is kind of a shame, because I feel like that the whole concept of this game is just really awesome, and the gameplay itself is also pretty good, too. The only thing I will say about the gameplay that maybe does need some tweaking is maybe the way how you drift around, like, tight corners. So yeah, I just think this game just has a really awesome idea of like playing as a bunch of characters in like mech suits and you just like race while also beating the shit out of each other. And it would be great to have like way more like maps and tracks in the whole game and maybe have like a customize your own character, or hell, you can even have like some sort of story mode within the game. Like, I think that would just be a really good time. And hell, maybe for lulz, you could even have like a guest character, a Pepsi Man, being in the game. I think he'd fit in this game perfectly. So like I already said, the game itself honestly is not that bad, it just needs more content to it, and well, I would just love to see a new one. Alright, and next up we got is an N64 game, and that being is Body Harvest from Rockstar. Yeah, Rockstar made this shit. Now this game has a bit of a mixed reception, where some people loved it, some people didn't, but I definitely will say that this is one of those games for me that I just don't think like holds up very well. Like, I think the idea of it is really awesome, and it definitely has a lot of really cool and impressive ideas for the time it came out. Like, the game is basically like an open world game with like an alien invasion, and there's like giant bugs that you gotta like take out as well. So yeah, the game is basically like open world Earth Defense Force. And given with the amount of money that Rockstar has, like, they barely don't need to do much with it in order to make the game like a whole lot better. Like, all they really need to do is just like fix up the controls, make them more up to date, obviously make the graphics look nicer. Like, I don't even care if it like doesn't look next generation or not. And the other thing that would be cool if they fixed up too is just the way how they do the mission structure. But yeah, like I said, I always thought that this game was really cool, but I never played it back in the day. I actually played this one like in somewhat more recent years, and while I did appreciate a lot of the ideas that it had, I did found that it was very difficult for me to really like get into, and I was like, man, like, this game had a lot of really cool potential. Alright, and next up we got is a PS2 game, and that being Sword of Etherea. Or is it Etherea? I have no idea, but basically it's a Konami game that was only released in PAL and Japan. Yeah, we didn't get this one. So this was a game I played in recent years, which I always thought looked really cool. I mean, it's basically like a hack and slash game where you have like your party members that can also like fight with you. And I remember this game just having some pretty cool mechanics that you can do like with like your other party members. You can combo together and all that. And yeah, the idea of it sounds awesome, but the one problem with this game for me was that I thought that the control was like really not that good. Like, it just felt like really stiff and kind of slow and a little bit unresponsive at times, especially trying to take out some like certain enemies was like a real pain in the ass. So knowing all this, yeah, I was actually pretty disappointed. Really all I want is just to have, like, decent controls in a game like this. Because, you know, I actually do love the way the game looks. Like, I do think it is, like, has, like, a really cool art style and all that. And also the game's soundtrack is fucking amazing. In fact, I'll go out and say that it's definitely the best thing that came out of this game is the great soundtrack. So if you take anything out of this, just listen to the soundtrack on YouTube. Trust me, you won't be disappointed by that. But yeah, the game just had some like really cool concepts as well that I just really liked, like the way how they portrayed the characters were interesting. But yeah, it's really just the controls that really need to be updated with this game. Like hell, like even if the game like looked and sounded like exactly the same thing and it just had like a more updated controls, then you know what? Like the game would be fine. Like I'd be totally okay with that. So now, as for the final game in this video that I'm going to mention, well, there's actually 3 games I'm going to mention, but they all kind of belong to the same similar thing, and you'll see what I'm talking about here, and that happens to be the Simple series. So this is a line of low-budget games that were only released in Japan and Europe, although there was a couple of them that did get released in North America, but not very many of them. I've covered a couple on this channel, and yeah, some of them are pretty shit. But despite how shitty they are, there's also a bit of a weird fascination I have with them because some of them are just so, like, weirdly interesting to me. And some of them actually do have, like, legit good ideas that I think could have been, like, great games. Especially the fact that this is all from D3 Publishing, who are actually still around today. And there's a shit ton of Simple series games, so I won't go over all of them, obviously. I'm just only gonna go over 3. The ones that I think that have, like, the most potential. So the first one I will mention for the Simple series happens to be the Made Clothes and Machine Guns. So this is a game I actually reviewed a couple years ago, and yeah, it's a pretty dull as shit game. And weirdly enough, it actually does have a fan translation now. So the thing that really amuses me with this game is really just the whole idea of it just being like a hack and slash where you play as like some anime-made character with a sword, and then you get guns, and you just gotta like mow down a bunch of enemies. Like, just the whole idea of that just sounds like a hell of a fun time, but unfortunately the game is like not fun, but you know, the whole idea of it I think has potential to be really kick-ass, and hell, you know what, maybe just for the hell of it, if they did do a remake of this shit, they should make it like rated M and just make it like super violent and edgy as shit. Like, I would love that. And another one that's also weirdly fascinating to me is a game called The Living Hell. So this is a survival horror where you play as a schoolgirl and you're being attacked by a bunch of giant bugs. I'm not gonna lie, I find the whole idea of a survival horror where you're going up against like a shit ton of giant bugs is pretty damn terrifying. Like, imagine a game like this if it had, like, the same type of, like, atmosphere and graphics as, like, Silent Hill 2 or something. Like, that'd be some insane shit. And the last one we're gonna mention here is a game called Maze Action. Yeah, what a great name that is. Well, that happens to be the European name, since this game actually did come out over there. So this is a maze game where you have two characters that are trying to like find a key and try to like get out. But of course, you can also run into each other and you can like beat the shit out of each other. You can like shoot each other and all this kind of stuff and pick up items and whatnot. So it's nothing like crazy complicated, but the thing is that this game is just really not that exciting, and also it just has like really shit controls and it just moves really slow. But the weirdest shit is that I'm still kind of fascinated with this game. I just find that the concept is something that I think it's something I would really like, for that it does kind of seem like it has some like deception elements within it, but just, you know, you're trying to like screw over the other player while you're also trying to get out of the room yourself. So yeah, it's just kind of weird. It's just one of those games that's like, yeah, it's obviously like a really shit game, but yet I just kind of wish it just was like a lot better, because I think there is some potential in this game to be pretty good. So those are all the ones I'm going to mention for today. So yeah, obviously there's a lot more games that I wish I could have talked about. Like, I don't know if I could like give out some like small honorable mentions. Would be games like Dr. Chaos on the NES, Zombie Virus on PS2, that's yet another Simple Series game. So with that said, what are some games that you think were like not received like the best, but you think like do have like potential to get like really awesome remakes if they were to happen? I'd like to hear about some. So with that being said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.